Hey everybody, welcome to the ZDogg MD show. Today is a very special episode because we have Dr. Alex Oshmyansky, the CEO and founder of the Mark Cuban Cost Plus Drug Company. And we've spoken before, guys, about disrupting the sort of medication industry. The fact that you guys don't even know this, but we were just talking before the show, Alex. And I was getting so pissed. I was so mad that I got to ask my audience in advance to do something. I want you to share this episode with anyone you know who is on any medication, because we can actually, through good old-fashioned American ingenuity, transform the system, save a bunch of lives, and stop harming people who don't have the money to be harmed, right?
Oh my God, yeah. I'm going to try to keep it in control because when I get up on my soapbox, it's hard.
I want the soapbox.
Okay, yeah. All right. Let me find some soap. It'll be great. It'll be great.
So just real quick reintroduction to people. We have an episode we did exactly 2 years ago where you told me the kind of premise of what you're doing to try to disrupt generic drugs and make them cheap and affordable in a model that's cost plus, where you're saying, okay, here's what the drug costs us to make. Here's a little margin so that we can run our business, and then the small fee that the pharmacy charges and shipping, and that's it. And it's vastly cheaper than what you're paying for medicines now, whether you have insurance or not, most of the time, which we'll talk about. In the last episode, we talked about the details of all the bad actors in the business that make drugs cost a lot. And you may think, oh, that's just pharma. No, it's not just pharma. It's actually companies and industries you've never even heard of, like pharmaceutical benefit managers or pharmaceutical wholesalers, things like that. So we're going to dive into all of that, and we're going to dive into what you're doing at costplusdrugs.com to actually completely disrupt this. So doctors, patients can actually go there, get these generic drugs at a vastly discounted price, and we'll talk about all the things. All right, Alex, now to you. Why are these drugs so expensive in the United States as it is?
The short answer is it's just a bunch of middlemen in between you and the actual pharmaceutical company. Like you were just saying, like the pharmaceutical companies tend to get most of the grief because people know what they are. When you talk about a pharmacy benefit manager, people fall asleep before you finish the words pharmacy benefit manager.
I'm already tired.
It's going to be a great podcast. Yeah. It's going to be a great hour.
The host fell asleep within the first 5 minutes.
Zubin?
Hey, you know what? You're a doctor. Just sternal rub me. It usually works. It's very hyper-stimulating.
Oh, man, it's been a while. It's been a while since I did a sternal rub.
Have you ever had to run a code as a radiologist?
Internship.
Yeah. You did a surgical internship.
I did a surgical internship back in the day.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, running a company is a lot like being a surgical intern.
Because you have to do all the things.
Yeah, you have to do all the things, and basically each day just starts with a big checklist, and you just got to get the checklist done.
Get the 40 patients rounded on, getting ready for clinic, prepping. By
9 a.m. because or by 7:30 a.m. because you got to get into the OR. Like it's startling how many lessons I took from my surgical internship that I actually take with me as like running a company.
And I bet that gives you a huge advantage over kids that have never done this, and they're going through the multiple failure cycle of startup. And
like,
oh no, I've already failed. I was an intern.
I have failed a lot.
You failed upward, Alex.
Yeah. Like any good entrepreneur does.
Right to Mark Cuban, yeah. And one other thing I wanted to say before we continue, you actually, I didn't realize this last time we talked, you have a PhD in mathematics from Oxford. What?
It has to be pronounced that way, by the way.
That's the rules.
No, I did. I was going to be, when I was a kid, I was going to be a string theorist. I was going to go into high energy particle physics. That's a great expression, by the way, you have.
This is my look of, oh, wow, because I would have done that if I could do math. So you were interested.
That was totally my shtick.
You were compelled for that.
Yeah. No. Wow. It's a long story. Like when I was a kid, I was in my first language is Russian. I was born here, but my family spoke Russian, so I spoke Russian. And then, I went to elementary school, and they put me in kind of like the slow kids class because I didn't speak any English. Went to second language English and was taught in Spanish, so I was even slower.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember it was me, a kid who spoke Arabic, and a kid who spoke Filipino in the back row, and we were all just kind of staring at each other like.
They're all like, "Ay, nako."
Yeah. No. But eventually I had this teacher in elementary school who really transformed my life. A guy, Gary Heath was his name. I was just like, hey, maybe this kid isn't slow. Maybe he's just Russian.
You're not slow. You're just Russian. Yeah.
And he actually stayed after school with me to help me like learn English and get rid of my accent.
Wow.
He at one point they had to place me. So they were like, here's a math test. Here's another math test. Oh, okay. You're not slow. You're super advanced.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing how much of life is just what your elementary school teachers tell you.
1,000%.
Like if you're 8 years old and they tell you you're brilliant, you're fast tracked through life. And if they're like, you're slow, you're slow tracked through life. I remember I wanted to be a truck driver and they were like, don't get, nothing against truck drivers, but they're like, don't get too ambitious. And I was like, oh. But yeah, no. So after that point, I was sort of fast tracked to do mathematics. Finished most of the math degree, but while I was in high school, effectively, and was going to be tracked into theoretical physics.
And you graduated college at 18.
Yeah, that's right.
You're not normal.
Oh no, I'm a freak. I'm a total weirdo. My wife can attest to that.
Yes, I've met your wife. Yes. She has a good head on her shoulders.
Yeah, she puts up with a lot.
Yeah. So, but you had this incredible aptitude for numbers and for understanding that space, which of course translates now directly into what we're talking about, right? Which is the complete scam. The fact that this doesn't add up. Why are drugs so expensive, especially in the United States? Why are they so expensive when, it just really doesn't add up, and you started looking into it, and this is what generated the outrage that caused you to start this company, yeah?
Yeah, no, honestly, the straw that broke the camel's back for me. Do you remember this character, Martin Shkreli, the pharma bro?
My bro. Yeah. Good guy.
Solid man.
Total homie. Yeah.
No, I think got upset about that, and myself and some infectious disease colleagues were like, hey, very naively, like, let's just make a drug company, sell the drugs at cost. It'll be a nonprofit. It'll be great. Went out for the better part of 3 years or so, trying to raise the funding for that. And speaking of failure, that was a glorious failure. Did not raise a single dime beyond what I put in myself. Eventually, here in San Francisco, got connected to a venture capital firm called Y Combinator.
Yep.
Have you heard of them?
Yep.
Essentially, they periodically donated to nonprofits. So I went and I spoke with them. And actually, it's a guy I think people would recognize now. His name, some people might, Sam Altman.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's the CEO of ChatGPT, OpenAI.
That's a small deal.
Yeah. I spoke with him and he was like, hey, we'd like to get behind what you're doing, but we don't think you'll be able to get it off the ground as a nonprofit. If you reincorporate as a public benefit corporation, so a public company or like a for-profit company, but with a public mission that's registered with the state, we'll invest in you like we would in any other company.
And that's how it started.
That's how it started.
That's right.
A few months after that, I just emailed Mark Cuban.
Cold emailed him, yep.
Just on a whim.
Did you do it like a Russian bot?
Oh, yeah.
Having that background where you're just like, Comrade Cuban.
Please invest here. Link. Yeah.
I am Nigerian prince.
Believe it or not, I have no idea how he does it, but he goes through all his public emails. I can't keep, I must get 1/1000th, if that, of what he gets.
Yeah.
But he responded within 5 minutes. If folks want to email him, there's the camera. mcuban@gmail.com.
Wow.
And you can say Alex sounded like an idiot on this podcast, and he'll be like, yes, I know.
He is, yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. He talks to he reads all his public incoming, and within 5 minutes, he got back to me and we had a conversation over email, and he invested a small amount to start with, and obviously became much more invested on sort of several levels after that.
It's so interesting because it went, like you said, when he really, I think the momentum started and you realized you could actually fix this problem, which is it's not just a problem of, you're going to make money out of this. It's a problem of people are dying because they can't afford these medicines. People in the South, we talked about this in our last episode, can't afford albendazole, which is an antiparasitic for hookworm, which is a disease of poverty in the South. And you said, well, wait, but the drugs cost this much to manufacture. They're generic. They're off patent. Why are they costing so much? And what did you come up with? Why is it that they cost so much?
Basically, there are several levels of middlemen who basically make their entire business just jacking up the cost of these drugs to exorbitant amounts.
Yeah.
Probably the best case study we have, just because it's the most extreme edge case, is a drug called imatinib, which is a tyrosine kinase inhibitor, basically chemotherapy for a condition called chronic myelogenous leukemia. If you just go to the drug manufacturer and are like, hey, we'd like to buy, imatinib, they'll say, okay, it'll be about, $30.
So the manufacturer, the pharmaceutical company that developed the drug, that spent the money on the R&D, that did all the stuff, went through the regulatory hurdles,
the one that does all the work, all the legal liability falls on them. Like they will say, yeah, well, you can buy it for us for about a month's supply. Meanwhile, the list price is about $10,000 for a month's supply.
Wow.
Now, probably worth a history lesson. Sorry. This is going to get boring, Z-Dog, so interrupt me.
I'm sorry, I just had a little PTSD about AP European history.
Okay,
I actually love that class, so go.
Okay,
go.
All right.
But do it in a Russian accent. Can you do that?
Comrade Bog. Yeah. But no. So like in the 1980s, drugs started to get expensive enough to warrant insurance covering them. But insurance companies weren't set up to bill pharmacies.
So wait, so prior to the 80s, insurance wasn't really covering meds?
Didn't really cover it. There wasn't a pharmacy benefit, so to speak. And just like throw that mug at my head if I start talking in terms of like insurance speak, because I hate it when I do that.
This mug is from my friends at Locals. Locals, supporting creators since, they don't sponsor the show.
Oh, okay.
So
that was a fun shout out.
Wasn't it though?
Yeah,
I love them though. They're great. We actually do have a supporter group there where people pay $5 a month to support us. That's our monetization.
Nice.
That we need a pharmacy benefit manager to be a middleman between me and the people who want to support our show.
Yeah, they'll charge $1,000 and then they'll give you a rebate and then,
clawback.
A clawback.
Yes. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
No. There'll be like, a co-payment maximizer that like makes sure it's as expensive as possible and then gives back a portion of like a nonprofit subsidizing the co-payment maximizer program. They'll capture a piece of that. Like,
okay, now I do want to throw the mug at you. Yeah. No, but what you just said. Okay, let's go back to the 80s.
Yeah.
So insurance. So because this is exactly how it happens. A $5 membership to Z-Dog MD's supporter tribe, where we talk about, spiritual awakening and fixing medicine, would be $50,000 if it had gone through this same process. So tell me the process. It's the 80s.
Yeah, so it's the 80s. Basically at the time, they're like, hey, we'll do the paperwork for like, 10 cents per claim. Every time someone gets a prescription, we'll charge 10 cents or $1.
These pharmacy benefit managers.
The pharmacy benefit managers. They're basically payment processors. Think of them as like Visa or MasterCard. But at some point they realize, hey, since we're paying all the money anyway, what if we negotiated the prices as well? And, the way we'll do it, so we're aligned with you, is we'll take a percentage of the discount we negotiate. So the bigger the discount, the more we make. So we are incentivized to make as big a discount as possible.
Which means the prices should be as high as possible so they can discount.
Yeah, it took all of probably, the amount of time it took you to figure that out. I think.
And I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. I did not graduate college at 18 and go to Oxford.
They got it in 1 second instead of 2. But yeah, they very quickly realized, if the discount is as big as possible, our share of that, and what better way to do that than make the drug prices as high as possible? So the analogy I give is, imagine you wanted to buy a Toyota Corolla.
Which I do. To this day. I have a Camry.
Oh,
but
nice.
I would upgrade down to a Corolla because it's more maneuverable. In a pinch when you're trying to escape the police.
Yeah.
Which happens every now and again.
Oh, I still have my 14-year-old Camaro from residency.
You have a Camaro?
Yeah. I was like, when I was a resident, I was like, okay, I have no money, but what's the coolest car I can get for that money?
Oh, that's awesome. Because it's a bargain.
Oh, yeah. Especially a while ago.
Oh, right. Wow.
Yeah. So I'm going to be driving that thing forever.
I drove my friend's Camaro to our prom in high school.
Awesome.
Yeah. It was great. We almost died, but it was great. So you want to buy a Toyota Corolla.
Yeah. And you don't want to negotiate because negotiating with the dealer is just miserable. It's awkward. They're going to take advantage of you. You're not comfortable with it. And someone who's a professional negotiator comes to you and it's like, hey, I'll do the negotiating for you. Give me 10% of what I negotiate back. You won't have to deal with it. I'll do a better job than you would anyway. I negotiate for lots of people so I can get a group discount. And you're like,
sounds good.
Okay, sign me up.
And this is what the insurance companies were saying. Yes.
Yep, this is what exactly. And the guy comes back to you and it's like, hey, fantastic news. I negotiated a 90% discount for you off of your Corolla. And you're like, wow, how did you, that's amazing. That's incredible. How did you do that? And they're like, don't think anything of it. Turns out the list price of the Corolla was $1 million. And you got
which they're worth that much, believe me.
Oh, they're fantastic.
I mean, they last
car.
forever. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so Toyota process is lean.
Yep.
Yeah.
But like, so you're stuck paying $100,000 plus 10% to the negotiator for their $900,000 they negotiated off. Plus the negotiator gets the difference between $100,000 and this is spread pricing between the $100,000 that you pay and the $25,000 actual cost. So the manufacturer still gets $25,000 or $30,000, whatever the case may be.
Right.
But the negotiator gets $175,000 or $165,000.
Wow.
And that may seem like an absurd analogy, but that exact figure, the average rebate for generic drugs is between 85 and 87%.
That's nuts.
So basically, they double the price of all the drugs, at least.
This supposed middleman who was supposed to negotiate on insurance companies' behalf to lower the cost of drugs and do the payment processing and bureaucracy, which, by the way, that's what insurance companies are created to do.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
Processing,
like what else do you do?
Well, you don't do anything else. So they create these middlemen, and what's fascinating now, and we talked a little bit about this offline, is that the middlemen, these PBMs, the three big ones, are owned by who?
Oh, I'm sure the same people your listeners always think of. United Healthcare, Cigna, CVS.
So
CVS,
three
Aetna.
large healthcare insurer type organizations who now have brought it on board. So when they gouge the price on this, they're not gouging themselves anymore.
Yeah, they're gouging other insurance companies.
Other insurance companies and who ultimately the patient.
Yeah. So we have a very strange coalition we've kind of built up behind us. Because there's sort of two groups of people that are primarily being taken advantage of by, these large entities, Optum, Express Scripts, CVS Caremark. So one is the indigent and poor, the people who have bad insurance plans. So like extreme example, imatinib, the list price is $10,000. The PBMs will say, hey, great news. We negotiated it down to $3,200 for you. And the actual adjudicated price. So if you have a high deductible plan, you go to your local pharmacy, your Walgreens, your CVS, what have you. You show your insurance card. They will say, for your first prescription of the year, you need to pay $3,200. Meanwhile, the real price is $30, and that's including our margin now. And we pay more than these Goliath healthcare companies. So, like all that difference, that entire delta is between $3,200 and $30 is going to the middlemen in the pharmaceutical supply chain. And people don't take their chemo because they can't afford that $3,200. There are people who are getting cancer because of the middlemen. And it's baffling.
Yeah, so a company like United Health that owns Optum Rx, which is the PBM. Optum Rx now, you told me earlier, they make more money than United.
Yeah, as of, I saw the story come out this week that they make more money both in terms of revenue and in terms of profit from Optum than from their core insurance business. And that's true for all the big three PBMs now. So I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this right to the camera. United Health is making the majority of its money by screwing patients who can't pay and are getting cancer because they can't have chemotherapy. I mean, it's baffling that it's been allowed to come to pass. But to my what I was saying earlier, so it's the poor and indigent and the very powerful that they're taking advantage of.
Yeah.
Because who ultimately pays for most of the drugs?
The big companies that are
large employers.
Yeah, that's right.
Large employers. I was talking to the CEO of a big oil company at some point and was just walking him through how much his company overpaid, and he was just like, "What the F? How many millions of dollars am I basically just handing over to these entities for? It's a tax in exchange for nothing."
Yeah.
So I think there's a unique coalition that can push some movement on this of grassroots, ground level support of patients who are suffering because of these actors, and large corporations who are like, oh, we're also being taken advantage of. Like, let's change the system.
So basically, everyone who has skin in the game, which is everyone except for the 3 PBMs and their associated entities, which are multitudes, right? I mean, CVS, Caremark, like these are, listen, I can say this now because I no longer care. Like, none of these people give us money. No, it's like, and even if they did, I would probably still say this. This mass, we called it last time, monopsony, like a buying monopoly.
Yep.
They have Americans under their knee, their neck under their knee, and it's a redistribution of wealth from the average person and our wages, because these big companies can't pay wages because they're so busy paying our health care costs, right?
Yeah.
It's a wage suppression. We're not competitive in the world because we have this wage suppression that's going on. We can't get bright people to work. And then they're redistributing it to the shareholders of these massive healthcare conglomerates, which honestly, and there's no one evil person running all of this. It's a system that by its definition is evil because it's actually causing net suffering in the world. And it's just a bureaucracy. It's just a left brain money-making scheme that evolved from what you're pointing at, this nascent seed in the 80s with PBMs and so on. And now we're in this mess.
Yeah, and sometimes I try not to go too far into the weeds because that's how they get you. So
what do you mean?
So I promise this is going somewhere. Back in my PhD at fancy schmancy Oxford, like when I was coming out, I was being recruited to be a quant. So a quantitative analyst.
Human computer, yeah.
Exactly. A quantitative analyst at a hedge fund.
Nice.
And this is 2007, 2008, when I was coming out, and the mortgage-backed security bubble hadn't burst yet.
Right. It's coming though.
It was coming. It was coming. And I remember going to interviews, and they'd have technical interviews where they'd like show you math problems and prove you know how to do math. And they showed me these incredibly complicated financial instruments, credit default swaps, collateralized debt obligations. And
I've heard of those in not a good way.
You can probably tell I tend to be overly blunt in life. And I think I said out loud during these interviews like, oh, so this is a scam. Because they started with good debt. They put a layer of indecipherable calculus on top of it, Edo calculus, stochastic calculus. And they're like, magically, it's good debt now.
Science.
Yes. Science.
Yes.
You'll never lose money because look at all the fancy math.
Wow.
And basically the same thing's happening to pharmaceutical prices. Like there are all these intermediary entities, rebate aggregate, all these companies, no one's – forgive me, this begins to get a little tinfoil hatty conspiratorial, but it's all true.
Yeah.
There's all these entities. CVS has Zinc, rebate aggregators, Swiss subsidiary companies, which aggregate rebates before they pass them on to the parent PBM, which then takes a chunk as well. There are these co-payment maximizer programs, which I was talking about which is just another version of the same scam. Like, I feel kind of sad because I used to study like real stuff, like theoretical physics or radiology.
There's nothing real about theoretical physics, bro.
Nah, fair enough.
Strings are totally imaginary. 11 dimensions? Come on.
It's an 11-dimensional soccer ball, dude. Like, yeah.
Think about how that World Cup would go.
Electroweak theory. Let's say that. Nice. Sorry, it took me a second to process that. But yeah, like... and now I just study like the various details of all these scams, but the details don't matter. They're, whack-a-mole scams. As soon as one's discovered by policymakers and they move to address it, there have been 3 that's pop up.
Loopholes
They just, okay, we're not allowing Swiss subsidiaries. We have Irish subsidiaries.
Wow.
It's all of this nonsense that's impossible to get at.
And let's not forget that this behavior on the part of the PBMs and all the stuff that you're talking about, the clawbacks and the DIR fees and all the other things that we've talked about on the previous show, but let's just rehash this. They are taking small independent pharmacists and squeezing them out of business by doing this because the pharmacist can't get paid until they get this rebate, which ties them to one particular PBM, which then ruins their negotiating power. And so what happens when the small independent pharmacists who know your name, who are in your community, who have relationships with the patients, go out of business? The CVS, the huge corporations that own these PBMs.
From an antitrust perspective,
how is it allowed?
How is it allowed that CVS gets to set the rates that its competitors get paid? That's insane.
Well, because the same people probably are sitting on the FTC in these places.
Yeah.
It's a revolving door. Yeah. I mean, my friend Marty McCary, Vinay Prasad, they talk about this stuff in healthcare. It's rampant. And outside of healthcare.
Right.
So this has been going on now for a few decades. We now have this huge drug cost burden, and it's bankrupting Medicare. And they're saying, oh, well, now we can, negotiate drug prices in Medicare for like a few drugs, right? Yeah. So it's a start, but
it's a start.
But
it just seems to me that there's these low-hanging fruit of these basically payment processors. Like a Visa MasterCard was charging you $3,000 per transaction. You'd probably try to find go to American Express. You try to find an alternative.
Yep.
I think, the Inflation Reduction Act is a great thing. It's a great start. But if it's going through the same pathologic systems that currently exist, I think it's kind of doomed to have a limited effect.
Okay, so let's talk about breaking this system, because you're not going to reform this system.
Yeah.
You really aren't. There's too much money involved. There's too many people that have been calcified by this money. Honestly, like the way they think is so shaped by the fact that they're making millions of dollars. You can't, it's very hard, short of like defibrillating the entire system. So what you said was, well, wait a minute now. What if, it's very simple. And tell me if I'm wrong on any of this. You said, okay, how about this? For generic drugs that are off patent, how about we source them at whatever their cost is from the wholesalers or from the manufacturer, and say, okay, so now we have this drug, or we make it ourselves, and you're building a plant, which we'll talk about. So now you have the generic drug, it's safe and effective. Then you say, well, okay, there's no PBM, there's none of that. It's just, here's what it's going to cost the end user, the patient.
Exactly.
It's going to be our cost of buying the drug plus a 15% markup so that we can run a business and grow it and do all that. And then plus the fee that the pharmacist charges to prepare the medicine, and then any shipping costs to get it to you. And that's it.
That's it. Yeah, just a flat. And it took forever to convince, the pharmaceutical companies to go along with it, because we revealed their price, which has just never been done.
Right. Because the whole house of cards operates on the assumption that nobody knows what the prices actually are.
Exactly.
The minute you shine sunlight on it, they go, wait, this costs what? When I ran my clinic, we would do straight pass-through lab prices.
Oh,
so
great. Yeah.
A lab company we worked with would say, we'll charge you as the doctor, if you pay cash for this lab, $3 for a CBC.
Oh, okay.
I was like, so what's the insurance getting charged for a CBC if I charge it through a complete blood count? Oh, $35. Or worse, like a thyroid test, $100 but it's only $8 if you do it through me. So we would just pass that on directly to the patient.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, and why isn't that the way for everything? Like but yeah, no, that's exactly what we're trying to do as well. When I was here last time, we had just convinced our first drug company to work with us in that transparent price model for one drug.
Nice. And that was Shkreli's company. Isn't that ironic?
Thanks, bro.
He really is a pharma bro.
Yeah. But in the year after, we convinced 3 others based on how well we did with that first drug.
Wow.
To work with us. And that's what we launched with. We launched with 3 pharmaceutical company partners.
Wow.
And then, it sounds like just a thing you say, but I promise it's true. We did not expect to blow up kind of the way we did. Like, we've got 2 million people now with accounts on our site. We're growing very steadily, about 30% every month without fail.
Wow.
On basically every metric you can measure. And we thought it would be a niche thing because it was for, drugs like albendazole, where we had the biggest impact.
For hookworm and parasites.
Hookworm, imatinib, colchicine. Well, I guess colchicine has a bit of a...
Gout is a serious public health threat to old men like me. Right? Who have a high purine diet.
Me too.
Here I am eating my high tyramine cheeses and just screaming when someone puts a sheet on my toe.
I got the feathers at home too. I'm not just a founder. I'm also a client.
You have hookworm? I knew it. Colchicine,
I spend a lot of time in the South.
You do, yes.
Yeah, but...
walking barefoot.
Yep. But we had, sort of a small number of like these ultra high-cost generics. And we're like, okay, that'll be a good public service to the people who need them. And I think we just lost perspective of how badly people are getting ripped off, even on really common medications.
Yeah. So something like lisinopril or something like,
Yeah, we were talking about just outside, like one of our biggest seller when we started was generic rosuvastatin, generic Crestor. And
it's a statin drug, lowers cholesterol.
Yep. And we were at first baffled by it because we're like, well, this isn't a very expensive drug. You can get it anywhere for almost nothing, like a penny a tablet, 2 pennies a tablet. And it turned out one of the big PBMs, Express Scripts, was at the time adjudicating it for $200 for a month's supply.
Wow.
So again, if you went in naively with your insurance card and, you'd be asked to pay $200, of which all of that would be clawed back by the PBM.
They take it all and put it into Express Scripts pockets. And who is Express? Are they CVS?
They're Cigna.
No, they're Cigna. So you're basically giving it right back to the insurance company that's purportedly paying the bill.
Yeah. How crazy is that?
It's nuts.
You're paying every month a premium to get a discount, which all go, it's just a second thought. You're like, how was this allowed to happen?
And so people will say, well, okay, then just, when you do this, you say, oh, well, this is a free market. This is America. This is how it works. That's not a free market.
No.
That's an opaque oligopoly of thugs. I mean, this is criminal. This is like the robber barons back in the 1800s.
Yeah, like, if there's no competition, there's no free market.
That's right.
There's really no competition. There's 3 oligopoly actors that are basically working in sync with each other, like whether directly or not. Like,
come on.
Yeah.
And, if the FTC really looked into that, what would they find? I mean, they're never going to look. Yeah.
I do think, so hopefully, fingers crossed, it sounds like Lena Khan, the new, hopefully more militant FTC leader is starting some investigations of PBM practices. So
yeah, that would be, well, I'm not holding my breath, but we'll see. So when I looked on your website, costplusdrugs.com, there are like 700 drugs now. So is that all from those 3 pharmaceutical?
No, God bless them. Our initial, I think other generic companies saw the growth, and we pay more. Our prices are not, I have to assume, because I'm not privy to the insider details, but what my understanding is our prices, we pay 10% more than the actual giant behemoth oligopoly.
Because you're not getting that massive leverage that they have. Right?
Yeah. So the drug companies are excited to work with us. They're like, oh, this is actually more profitable. So now we have something along the lines of 30 generic companies which have partnered with us in the scope of the last year.
Okay. So let me just put a pin in that, because what you're saying is the pharmaceutical manufacturers have to give these PBMs the drugs at X cost. You can give them a little more.
Yeah.
Because you don't have the leverage. But you're still charging vastly less because you're not marking it up PBM style.
Exactly.
And the patient ends up saving a ton of money. You still make your 15%, and the pharmaceutical manufacturer actually makes more. So it's in everyone's interest except for the PBMs.
Exactly. And that's not even counting the fees which are charged to the pharmaceutical companies for the privilege of working with the PBMs.
Oh, that's right, yes.
Formulary management fees, education fees, data service fees. As soon, in the recent past, policymakers have gotten wind of the problems with this spread pricing and rebate reimbursement models. So, they've recategorized, the rebate dollars as bona fide service fees, which under the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021 are permitted. So there's all of this.
This reminds me so much of that title insurance you see when you buy a mortgage, when you get a mortgage. It's wait, $6,000 for title insurance? What is that? Well, it's so that no one steals your title. Okay, in the history of mankind,
how often has this come up?
Has that ever happened? Well, it doesn't happen because we have title insurance. Wait a minute. So it's the same thing. These made up fees that are making somebody
they're just
money.
They're just basically stealing money.
Parasitic.
They're just creating this incredibly complicated system that nobody can understand. Even people who are experts in the space get surprised all the time by new things that are happening in Aruba and offshore entities. And then they're like, well, it's really complicated, so that's why it costs so much. But why?
Yeah.
There's no reason for this complication. A criticism we get of our work so far is we're not doing anything new.
Right.
And I'm like, absolutely. We're doing retail.
Right.
We buy something, we mark it up a little bit, and then we sell it again. But
here's the thing. You're not doing anything new, right? But you're doing something quite brave. And I say brave because these big corporations will go all out to try to stop you and anyone who works with you, right?
I did not commit suicide. I'm very happy. I am. But no,
I don't even think you're joking, honestly. I think you have
that wasn't
to
meant to be funny.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Like
I come from a family of Russian arms merchants, remember? But no, I think I just got super, super lucky in running, emailing Mark Cuban that day because, without, a couple factors that he has. One is the ability to invest capital without large sums of capital, without like needing to optimize financial returns. Because I think even perhaps before we met last time, they were already offering to buy us out.
The big companies.
The big companies.
Yeah.
And they
just to stop you.
Just to stop us from ever existing.
That's great. That's a good sign.
Yeah. And they've, did something equivalent just a few weeks ago again.
And you've heard from people you work with, vendors and manufacturers and so on, that they've said they've been pressured to not work with you.
Yeah. I think almost all our vendors have come up to us, and I believe it's true because they say the exact same thing every time. They are told, don't work with Mark Cuban.
Oh,
in those words. Or we will retaliate against you.
Well, at least they didn't say don't work with Alex Oshmyansky. It's just harder to say.
Yeah, I am insulated. Like they cannot fit.
They can't say your name. And No, but so that's literally what they're being told en masse, which of course. Why would they? Of course they're going to say that. They think they have all the power. They're also scared, honestly, because they know, listen, on a conscious and unconscious basis, the people sitting on these piles of cash, they're like Scrooge McDuck. They're jumping into a pool full of gold doubloons and they're like, why is my head not injured from this solid gold? Oh, because I'm special. But deep down, they know they're not special. They know that it's a house of cards. They know that if anyone actually shines a light on it, they're screwed and their entire empire is going to crumble. And then along comes, Mark Cuban, and he's doing exactly that. So, of course, they're going to say all these things.
Yeah. And, Mark Cuban's celebrity has sort of been the other sort of magic piece of it.
Yeah.
Like,
don't underestimate that.
Don't underestimate that. But, our growth is primarily not driven. I think without his celebrity, we would have never gotten attention to begin with.
Yeah.
But his TV appearances and stuff aren't really what grow business to the company. Like we say the same thing to each of our vendors, like, we will sell none of your product for like a month or two, and then suddenly we'll sell out of all of it.
Yeah.
Because what happens, and we've seen this happen time and time again, is imagine you're a patient with chronic myelogenous leukemia, and you suddenly save $3,000 on the exact same medication.
You're on every Facebook group telling people. Exactly. Right.
It's all word of mouth.
That's right.
Everything. We spend $0 on marketing.
Yep.
$0.
Including not paying me for the show.
Thank you, Zubin.
We are not sponsored. I just love what you're doing.
But yes, seriously, $0 marketing budget. We did put out a press release the day we launched, so maybe like $45 marketing budget. So
that's
maybe
a lot, dude.
Yeah,
that's more than I pay.
A little less than GoodRx, pays on ads. But yeah, it's just exploded that way.
It's nuts. And, since the last time you were here, when it was just kind of nascent and you were working with just a couple things, and now you have these 700 medications, I went to your website and I'm like, okay, so where is Alex now with the whole thing? And I poked through the website, and this is how it works. You go to the costplusdrugs.com, and it's got a list of all the medicines. You can search them by disease and so on. And then you go, okay, so this was the retail price of the medicine at the time we put it on the formulary, and here's our cost, here's the markup, and here's the pharmaceutical fee or the pharmacy fee, and here's what it costs you, and here's a % discount and so on. And I'm like, this is dramatic. This is great. So how do I get my drugs? Oh, it's very simple. You get your doctor, send the prescription here. It can be done electronically. We fill it. We operate through our partner TruePill. Is that
it? Our fulfillment vendor TruePill.
Fulfillment vendor, yes. And I got to get the words just right. And they will then fulfill it by sending it to you. And you pay $5 shipping depending on what it is. And that's it.
Yeah, that's all there is to it. Costplusdrugs.com. I'm not as good as Mark as remembering to say that over and over. So costplusdrugs.com.
I've said it more times than you, bro.
Yeah,
okay,
I'm
an innate
CEO.
You just need to go back to string theory. Because somewhere in that 11th dimensional superstring.
I got to talk to Ed Witten. He'd sort me out.
I just got to go read Brian Greene's books again.
Yeah. But costplusdrugs.com. And we work with all of the major EMRs, so you can send a patient script to it. Please include the patient's email. It makes it a lot easier in the prescription. And then we send them an email to set up their account. And within 5 minutes, they can get their prescription ordered and sent over to them.
And so what we can do on this show, because we have a huge medical audience, is say, hey, like if you're a doctor or a nurse practitioner or a PA, as somebody is prescribing, add it into your Epic flow that it's one of the pharmacies you can send to, talk to your patients about it, see if it's something they're interested in.
Yeah, and there's particular groups of physicians, I think, where we've gotten more of a cult following.
Yeah.
So urologists, abiraterone, the prostate cancer drug, we offer kind of like imatinib.
Yeah.
Much lower price point for that. I think ours is like $117 compared to thousands upon thousands of dollars for the other prices.
So urologists pay attention.
Rheumatologists, OBGYN. We have a lot of women's health products that are much less expensive.
Like Secret, the deodorant that's strong enough for a man but made for a woman? My daughter, sorry, this is an aside. Okay. We go back to this, I promise. My daughter has to take a required ethnic studies class for her public school in California because it's California. And I was looking through her curriculum, and she's enjoying it because it's like a mental game. Like, let me figure out all the ways that white people can oppress non-white people and men can oppress women. And so she goes through this whole thing. She knows that it's all tongue-in-cheek for her, but she's looking at it going, oh, that's interesting. And one of the things was advertising that stereotypes.
The pink washing?
The pink washing, yes. So Mr. Clean used to advertise directly to women. And you and me both have an affinity for Mr. Clean. And you say things like, hey, cleaning shouldn't be the majority of your day. Get back to the work that matters. And it showed them with the kids like doing kid stuff. And I was like, wow, that is kind of very gender specific kind of advertising.
Well, I just use a magic eraser.
That's my thing.
All the time.
That is strong enough for a man, but made for a woman as well.
Is it?
No.
Is it? Okay. Well, our vaginal estrogen cream is mostly,
I like how you brought it back.
Yeah, loop it in. I'm learning that marketing thing you're talking about.
You're very good.
I'm trying.
Costplusdrugs.com.
Costplusdrugs.com.
So that the vaginal estrogen cream, which is the indications are like postmenopausal dryness, bleeding, different things like that.
Again, it's sort of the similar story. Ours is, like $30, $40. List price is thousands of dollars. So communities of physicians and providers that have patients that are affected by these like exorbitantly high drug costs.
Yeah.
Like if it's a generic product, odds are we have it at this point. And my personal goal is to just have every drug product we can sell by mail available through our site by the end of the year. And, we're working now to build a network of independent pharmacies as well.
That's great.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be fiercely loyal because you're not screwing them the way
exactly.
the PBMs
They
are.
should make a profit on every script.
You should talk to the National Community Pharmacy Association. I'm sure you have. And I mean, these are my people. I've spoken for that org. Okay. So, but the elephant in the room. How do you pay for these drugs, even though they're cheaper? Can you use insurance? And I know the answer to this is complicated.
It is. So, there is one, I think I'm allowed to say it now because it's public now, disclosed to the public. We're working with at least one.
It's on your website.
Health insurer, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Pennsylvania, Capital Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Nice.
Because, the prices we charge to their members are less.
Yeah.
And
do they have nothing invested in the PBMs?
They don't.
Blue Cross,
to the best of my knowledge, I don't think directly at least. But
not for profit.
Not for profit.
Yeah.
But so their members can now go to our site and have the amount they pay for our drugs. If there isn't, if it's below their copayment, it at least gets to their deductible. Yeah. So it goes against their yearly deductible.
So that's good.
Yep.
Because that's important because even if you're paying a lower amount, you do want it to count towards your deductible if you have a high deductible plan.
Yeah. And we should be rolling out with several other state Blue Cross Blue Shield plans in the next few months.
Great.
And in addition, we're coming up with a program that'll work directly with self-insured employers. Because as you might imagine, if they use, one of the big three as their PBM, they don't want to put us in their network.
Right.
So we're creating and against
carve-outs?
Bolt-on or add-on benefits that they can use and basically send their employees to us. And, my goal is, like $0 co-payments because our costs are so much less. Imagine imatinib again. If you're an employer, you're getting charged $3,200 every month.
Yeah.
So it's in all the interest in the world for the drugs just to be free to the patient, to incentivize them to use our channels because you're still saving $3,000 every month.
Get rid of the copay. Go through your channel, dude. Okay, we'll get back to the insurance issue, but here's how you solve healthcare in this country. the large employers that pay for 50% or so of healthcare in this country, the Home Depots, the big Boeings, like these big companies, and not so big companies actually are increasingly self-insured to try to control, see if they can put a dent in the cost rather than just paying an insurance company to take all the risk. They'll take the risk themselves.
Yeah.
You get a employer like that. You create a network of doctors that operate on this Health 3.0 model that focuses on primary care, prevention, health coaches, team-based care, like what we were doing with Turntable. You then do the drug benefit through you, which saves a ton of money, and you make it copay-less. Same with the primary care. No copays to see primary care. So make a relationship instead of a transaction out of the health care. And then you work with the best tertiary centers for doing the complicated procedures, even if it involves taking a plane flight, because you save money and you get better outcomes with people who do it a lot and are trained specially to do it. You tie it all together with an electronic record that's shared across all of that. And you basically now cost half of what you're paying now. And the employer can pay it, or the government can pay it, or anyone can pay it. And that's how you do it.
I'm 100% there with you. It's kind of crazy. Isn't that what should already exist?
Isn't that what
healthcare insurance should be already? But,
and it just got away from us by history.
When I give talks now, there's almost always, young people in the audience, and they ask, like, how would you modify policy? We're super into politics. Like, how would you change policy? What would you do? What can we advocate for at the national level to bring reform? And maybe I'm just a cynical, grumpy old man. I call myself the George Costanza of pharma because I'm just grumpy all the time.
And you have a pirate shirt.
And I have a pirate shirt. Yar! Not puffy enough. I was hoping to get one.
Needs more frills.
Yeah, more frills. But yeah, I was, maybe I'm just like, you know what? It's just not going to happen. The system is too sclerotic and too deeply entrenched. We have to build new structures ourselves. We have to build new institutions. And that's incredibly hard to do against basically monopolistic competition. But where it is possible, I think that's the way to go, is just try to build new, less corrupt structures.
And what it will do is it'll create a crack that then new regulation can actually emerge, where it's like, oh, actually, you know what? We're going to incentivize this kind of thing. Like direct primary care, where it's like a flat fee for unlimited primary care. That was actually considered an insurance company and regulated that way before, and things are starting to shift. So I think people start to wake up when we see the bottom line affected. And also the fact that this system is heading towards, it's like a caterpillar. It's either going to eat itself and crap itself to death and die in its own feces. Which is pretty standard behavior in my part of the woods. I mean, basically, my home is it's waiting for me to be found in my own stool.
You do you. I ain't here to judge. See,
you are learning. You are learning how to market better. See, last 2 years ago, you'd been like, yeah, me too. My house is a disaster too. So it's heading towards the precipice, and either it's going to die and eat itself, or it's going to spin a cocoon. It's going to stop. All these disruptive elements that are starting to form are going to actually help it pupate, and out will come a butterfly that has this infinite degree of motion and freedom. And I think and we can't even anticipate what it looks like yet, but the parts are necessary. And what you're doing is one part of it. Now, let's say your insurance company isn't on that list, which most likely it's not. So now what would the reason be for you to spend your own money instead of the insurance company's money? In other words, walk me through, I can't use my insurance on your site. Why would I want $5 lisinopril from your site when I could just file a thing with my insurance company, and what would happen then?
I would say don't in that case. We're here to help patients. And if you have a $0 copayment for your lisinopril as is, God bless.
So how many people have that, or how many people actually are going to have not only a copayment, but also a high deductible plan where they're actually paying for the list price of that lisinopril?
A shocking amount.
So you think you have insurance, but you don't.
Yeah.
You have catastrophic insurance.
Basically, yes.
That's right.
There's no way you'll reach your deductible. So basically you're paying, several $100s a month just in case a catastrophic event happens.
Yeah.
But basically you have zero coverage on all of this stuff.
That's right.
And they're meant to negotiate the price so you get a discount from list price, but oftentimes it just...
it's nothing.
It's nothing.
Yeah.
And, the actual price of the drug is much less than the list price.
Right.
And you're getting charged list price.
Right.
And, it goes to the pharmacy, but then it gets all clawed back by the big PBM.
Yep.
Like, Express Scripts always gets its cut, like one way or another.
Yep.
Even the discount card programs, like they are all administered by the big PBMs. And even if you pay cash, they charge a fee for swiping if you pay $1, the pharmacy's underwater because it's like an $8 or $9 transaction charge.
Right.
That goes straight to the big 3 PBMs every time you swipe that card. So it's not even just doesn't cover the cost of doing it. It is literally a charge to the pharmacy.
Charge to the pharmacy. Yeah. So it just made me think. So even with high deductible plans, this is super useful. I know I have high deductible plans, and I've always purchased generic drugs whenever I can online directly without using insurance. Here's another solution for a healthcare problem. Then you have big employers and all that. Okay, so we have structures where there's direct primary care. There's a company like yours that's providing drugs. And then for the specialty drugs that are still on patent, there may be something different or some version of this that doesn't have PBMs involved. And then you have catastrophic insurance that covers any disaster, like you get cancer, you get in a car wreck, you need emergency surgery. And that is very low cost because it's just catastrophes, like your auto insurance. You don't pay your auto insurance to cover your oil change or that. So then that means the company, your employer, or yourself, if you're self-employed or whatever, can pay for the drugs themselves because they're not that expensive, can pay for the direct primary care because it's like a gym membership, like $50 a month. They cover all that, and then they get the wraparound catastrophic insurance for a disaster, and you've solved healthcare. It costs a third as much as it does now. It doesn't bankrupt us. You get great outcomes. Everyone's skin is in the game because the patients are like, well, I'm not going to get on a drug that I don't need because I still have to pay $5 and that's $5 of my dollars. So let me at least look at that. I don't know.
No, I'm 100% with you. Maybe I'm talking about things I don't know enough about at this point, but my thing has always been the more primary care, the better.
Yeah.
Generally, the less tertiary care.
Yes.
But the more primary care, the better. So if you put in any artificial barrier to a patient going to see their primary care physician,
you're causing trouble.
You're just causing, it's a recipe for disaster.
Now, I'll say one thing. I think there's a nuance there, which is the current model primary care is just a feeder to tertiary care.
Yeah.
Because they're so overwhelmed and they're worried about medical legal stuff and they don't have the time to spend to develop relationships.
Very true.
But the kind of model we're talking about, it's actually a preventative thing where you actually decrease the downstream spend. It's upstream medicine. And it looks at social determinants of health too, like what's going on with diet and safety around the home and all those other things. And you need that kind of team-based approach. So yeah, absolutely.
No, I'll say, and maybe this is TMI, forgive me, but it's a podcast. It's good for the podcast.
Does it have to do with being found down at home in stool?
Kind of.
Okay.
But no, I was
I'm perked up.
So I'm a diabetic, and I was really struggling with it for a while, I'll be honest. Part of it is, just getting the company off the ground. It's been, 80, 100-hour weeks for years and years. And, I'm a little bit obsessive in my personality type.
You think? Yeah.
Wee bit.
Yeah.
So I just put my personal health by the wayside, gained 50 pounds. My A1C went through the roof. And basically what turned it around is I was like, you know what? This feels very bougie, but I'm going to, and I'm a radiologist. I have every advantage in the world. I'm a radiologist with a company that I'm in charge of, funded by a billionaire. I have every institutional advantage in the world. But what really turned it around, I splurged. I got one of these concierge practices.
Yeah.
And suddenly I could go in as much as I needed to for a couple of weeks until I got everything in order. And now I'm fine. Now I'm, losing weight, getting healthy, all this stuff. But without that primary care ability to go to the primary care physician just to get it sorted out, and it's only because I'm fortunate enough that I have that ability. But if you don't,
dude, you basically just pitched our whole model at Turntable, which was concierge for the masses.
Yep.
Like concierge at a $50 a month price point that your insurance company could pay. I mean, that's exactly it. And what it is, it's almost like you're developing a relationship with someone who you feel accountable to a little too, and they're accountable to you. And this is kind of mutual accountability that helps. And it's almost like having a continuous glucose monitor, which is also helpful. And you look great, by the way. I mean, even compared to 2 years ago, you're just killing it. You're crushing the game. I mean, gosh, as a fellow bald man who can't grow as lush and thick a beard as you, I have to say. So you're doing better, A1C's down, all that.
Yeah. Back basically to normal. But the idea that you can't go to the primary care physician as much as you want because there are financial hurdles to it, like it's detrimental not just to the health of the individual, but even if you're viewing it purely from capitalistic, like what saves the system the most money.
Yeah.
Like if you're preventing, an admission for like, a diabetic coma,
right, or an amputation,
diabetic retinopathy.
Yeah.
Like if you're preventing that in the long term, you're saving the system money.
Yeah.
So why not pay a little bit more up? It's penny wise, pound foolish.
Exactly. And the problem with that pitch, if you try to give it to insurance companies, is they'll say, well, we only keep our members for 2 years on average. So if we prevent a case of diabetes, it's just helping our competition. So let's just let everybody have the diabetes. It's insanity.
And you actually find something very similar with these new genetic therapies happening. So, or we can go to one that's more prominent in existence, Sovaldi, the cure for hepatitis C.
Yeah.
When I was in med school, there was no cure. There is a cure now. It's fantastic. And the drug company which initially introduced it came under very heavy criticism because they charged $100,000 for the cure.
Right.
And their argument, which actually I kind of buy, is like, well, it's $100,000, but it saves, more than $1 million over the lifetime of the patient, in terms of like preventing hepatitis or, hepatocellular carcinoma, cirrhosis.
Anybody who's taking care of hepatitis C advanced disease knows that you're spending more than $1 million on that
easy,
patient.
easy. So their pitch basically to government was like, we're going to save tons of money. The problem became one of financing because, okay, that's great, but we don't have $100,000 to cure everybody. Like that would bankrupt Medicare.
Yeah.
To do that now.
All the hep C, yeah.
So ironically, what happened is just the sickest patients got the cure, which is the exact opposite of what you want, right?
Because you want to prevent that.
You want to prevent it before it gets to like hepatocellular carcinoma, not like when it's at the edge. So like, it becomes this, sort of systemic issue of, the insurers viewed it the same way. Like, what if this patient gets a new job in 2 years and
we've spent all this money.
We spent all this money, so nobody wanted to cover it.
Right.
So, that's something that's, over my head, it's above my pay grade.
Well,
but, certainly there must be a solution to it somewhere.
Some will say, well, single payer medicine is the solution. Some will say, there are these insurance companies. That's the other piece of my uniquely American healthcare transformation plan is make those catastrophic insurance companies not for profit. And have them, if they need some government subsidies, that's fine. It's kind of what they do in Germany. So people can compete. You can have different networks and so on and compete based on that. And I think then it's a unique combination of this American approach, and which Americans, I think we're different. We're founded on different principles. I mean, you Ruskies, you guys just love to be communists, but we're a little bit more.
Can't help ourselves. I should say I'm Ukrainian,
you know what? I knew that. I knew that from last time. You're Ukrainian.
I'm so used to saying I'm Russian because nobody knew what that was.
Now it's like you have to distinguish.
Yeah, now I actually have to proactively remember to say, because when I used to say I'm Ukrainian, people would go, oh, you're from Uganda?
Wow.
Yeah, I got that so much.
It's the beard.
Yeah, it's the beard.
Yeah.
They're like, that's weird. And then I'm like, no, there's a country, the Ukraine. Okay.
Unfortunately,
but now it's obviously very much
the PR for Ukraine has gotten it noted by a horrible tragedy. By the way, how's that been for your family and?
Well, we're very fortunate. My entire family got out at the fall of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
But no.
Are you Jewish as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow, man. You're quite intersexual. That's I can't edit that because I won't. You're quite intersectional when it comes to sort of tragedy.
We haven't had a good run of it.
It's been tough.
It's been tough. Like
20th century was hard. 21st century was hard.
Not good. Yeah, most of I think basically my immediate nuclear family were the only ones who survived the Holocaust.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So 20th century European history was not kind to
not good.
There's a reason you don't hear about a lot of Oshmyanskys out there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, that's it is what it is, but
I like to keep it light.
You keep it light. Yeah. And that intergenerational trauma actually is a real thing. And what I love about the karmic residue of this, if I may use such a loaded term, is that it's now generated an Alex Oshmyansky who comes into the world, sees where there's this deep injustice, and actually does something that's uniquely within his skill set to do, all while suffering with the same diseases that would have been prevented with good collaborative team-based medical care that's affordable. So the one question I had for you then relating to insurance, so Medicare, why would a Medicare patient want to use your service for drugs?
Oh, I think it's again the exact same thing, and it all comes down to, I hate to say this because I like simple solutions, but that people don't have to think about, but comes down to their individual plan design.
Right.
So if they're on a Medicare Part D plan that's run by one of the PBMs and they have a high, and they're in their donut hole, let's say, where hopefully that'll go away with the IRA in the next few years. But if at the moment they're paying basically cash list price for all their drugs in their donut hole, we're still there, and we can still save them hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to spend, depending on the specific medication.
Got it. Perfect. That makes sense. And what's to stop somebody like an Amazon from doing what you're doing? Like, what about the barriers to competition here? We have sort of an odd view on it, which is we welcome it. Yeah.
Like, that's the point.
That would actually solve the problem, because then it would become commonplace.
Like, we want to change the system, not necessarily maximize. I think Mark
needs more money.
Yeah.
That's really what he needs.
No, I think he's just come to terms with like, okay, I'm going to lose all the money I put into. Hopefully,
that's a good way.
If he sees this, I'm not thinking about it that way. But I think he's like, he's in it for like the social mission. I genuinely think he's in a position where he's like, he doesn't need, more billions of dollars. He'll never spend his, the amount that he has now.
Yeah.
So I think he's genuinely, unless the wool is being radically pulled over my eyes,
right.
Like in it for the right reasons. So, if the system changes and we no longer need to exist, I liked being a radiologist. I can go back to that.
Yeah, and you still do it.
I still do it. Yeah, I still practice.
Yeah. And it's a really good situation that you're in, because I think you can do the disruption here, and then if it opens the floodgates, that's even better.
Yeah,
it's even better.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, because everyone will benefit. It'll be a rising tide, and it'll wash away this scum on the surface of the lake, which is the PBM model, the middleman model. And this is true of GPOs and the purchasing space. It's true of a lot of middlemen action in healthcare.
And, even beyond healthcare, we've just
mortgage industry,
industry, any number of things, which is just so endemic in U.S. society, which is just squeezing normal people and funneling the money upwards. People that all these questions about like why, the normal people are so upset at the political status quo, and you're just like, they're being constantly stolen from, like every nickel and dime all the time. Like what is the surprise here? Yeah. Like, and everybody feels it. Like, you're constantly getting like, the phone companies nickel and diming you off of made up charges. Like,
cable company charging you for overuse fees during a pandemic when you're stuck on Zoom. Like,
all of these like, just this constant sensation of like theft from you. Yeah. And, in other industries, okay, it's bad, but just like, it's so particularly vile.
In healthcare.
Yeah. Because you're talking, you're stealing money from kids with cancer, man.
Yeah.
Like, the Russian arms dealers didn't do that shit. Like,
Nope. And I got to say this too. They're doing all that, but then they'll have these wonderful conferences where they spend tons of money and they have vendors everywhere. They're showering all this stuff and these parties and dancing and all that shit. And I know this because I've spoken at some of these conferences. Yeah. And I still have to take a shower and scrub myself with soap now. And now I'm like, I don't know. I've gotten to a point where I'm like, I'm never like, this has to be fixed, even if we have to blow it up. And that's why the minute I think we connected like pre-pandemic and it's like, dude, somebody's doing something about it, who also has the background to be able to do something about it, and now the backing to be able to do something about it. So what can we ask our audience? Well, okay, hold on. Before we get to that, I have to ask you this again. So because I meant to ask you in the beginning, but I didn't want to get too sidetracked. So wait, so you went and did this whole PhD and you were going to do string theory. What happened there?
I remember like the specific moment where I changed my mind with all the wisdom of like a 17-year-old. So I it was actually no joke, the 11-dimensional soccer ball. Oh. Because it was on the cover of Nature. Oh. And I remember thinking, not understanding it, of course, but just looking at the like concept and being like, oh, so this is ridiculous. Like, this will never affect anything in the physical world, and I want to make a difference. So I pivoted right there and decided to become a doctor because help people with science. That sounds nice. And I went from a math major to a biochem major, and I wound up doing an MD PhD because I entered really young and still did the PhD in math, but it was mathematical biology.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
like computational biology.
Computational biology.
Did you know Russ Altman at Stanford? He's one of those guys.
Oh, yeah. Rusty, is that?
I don't know.
No, I think it's somebody else.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So that's my connection to
Rusty Hoffman. Sorry.
Rusty Hoffman at IR. Yeah. And Grand Rounds. So Russ Altman was my clinic attending when I was a resident, and I never knew how famous he was in the space of that kind of a personalized computational genetic medicine and things like that.
Oh, I see.
And when I found out, I was like, Russ, like this whole time you had me convinced you were just like an average primary care doc. And now, I realize people would tell me that.
Yeah, but in retrospect, I made a big deal about knowing stuff about stuff, but really on the scale of mathematicians, like I'm a good college ball player, but I'm not in the NBA. I washed out of the NBA. Right. So know your limitations.
I hear you. That's like when I used to play electric guitar. I'm like, I'm not a professional musician. It's not. I can study music as an undergrad, but it's not going to make me a professional musician.
Yeah.
But what's weird is that all kind of then funnels into what you do now. And it's the same with you, right? It's the same thing. Like all that stuff now makes sense. You can actually look at that and go, oh, hey, actually all this complex theoretical math, let's make it real simple. The cost of the drug plus 15% plus the pharmacy fees plus shipping. There you go.
That's the thing. You can't you can't trick me with the complex math, which is good enough.
That's good enough.
Yeah, because if you put it in front of someone and you're like, oh, look, this is a great deal. No, man.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. Yeah.
And the problem is most humans don't have that ability to see through that subterfuge. And when you see it, it's so outrageous because that most people can't see it.
Well, like the average doctor, I guess I've never seen a study about this, but I'm just going to assume based on my anecdotal experience, the average doctor has never heard of a pharmacy benefit manager.
On average, I bet not.
Not even heard of it.
I had to learn about it because I was speaking for NCPA and they're like, do you know these PBMs? I'm like, peanut butter and marshmallow? What is that? And quickly.
Yeah, no.
Then you can't believe it. Then you're just outraged.
Yeah, but like what hope does the average patient have? Basically zero.
And they have no leverage. They have no power. What are they going to do? Yeah. Well, now they have at least a choice. They can take their money somewhere else.
Competition,
which I think is great. And are your generics generally well-produced, safe, all that? Because I'm sure people would have that question.
Yeah, A-rated. We do have a strong preference for North American and European manufacturing, places with strong regulatory regimes, but basically all the world's beta-lactams are, antibiotics are made in China. So like there's kind of no way around it.
Right.
But we are unique in terms of a space in the industry. We do have an independent testing lab where we send products to random samples to get a sense of, does it have any contaminants in it? Does it have the amount of active ingredient in it that it purports to have? So we do random testing.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I have a follow-up question on that. Do meds actually expire or is that total bullshit?
Depends on the med.
Okay.
Yeah, like if it's like insulin, it does denature.
Sure.
But other drugs just like last forever. Yeah.
So is the expiration date another way that these companies are making money by putting a date on it that maybe isn't as accurate for potency if it's still keeping 80, 90% of its potency? Why put a date on it that's going to force pharmacies to throw it away? I talked to a lot of pharmacists and pharmacy techs who are like, we're tossing all these drugs.
Yeah, I think part of it is that, like planned obsolescence, but also I think it's just you need to have studies going to the FDA to show, how long the drug lasts. And, our albendazole product, initially it had dating of 2 years and eventually now it has dating of 4 years.
Okay. So
because we were able to just basically like keep it on the shelf. Like the company that makes it kept it on the shelf and 4 years later they sent lab samples to the FDA. But you actually have to proactively show that it's still safe. And if you're, not actively doing that, then you're not allowed to. It's not even if the pharma company wants to or not.
And I guess there's two components. There's efficacy. Does it maintain potency or does it degrade into something that's actually potentially toxic?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I hesitate to say because, I don't want to get sued. But, probably a lot of it is on, probably still stable years and years and years down the road. But it really depends on the specific drug.
The food expiration dates are a little bit, they're pretty soft.
Yeah, I feel like You remember Sully, the guy who landed the plane?
I met him. I spoke after him at a conference,
cool.
and I got the joy of not only seeing him speak and crying, his talk was so good, but then meeting him right afterwards, and then the joy of having to follow him with a talk. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah,
but no, I think I saw him on like the Colbert Report or something. It was one of these late night shows, and they were like, "So, honest answer, like." They're like, you have to turn your cell phone thing off as a scam, right? And I feel kind of like that because I'm sure there's like some situations where it's a bad idea, but for the most part, it's probably fine.
That's probably what it is. So you're kind of shooting at preventing that never event.
Yeah, and you wonder how much you can do with like taking those drugs that are getting thrown away and like donating them potentially.
Assuming there's still safety.
Assuming
even if they're not fully efficacious, better than zero.
Better than nothing.
Right. Assuming it's not a mission critical thing. But yeah. So that's just another thought. And is there any charitable component to what you guys do beyond keeping the prices low?
It sounds strange, but no.
Yeah.
And actually that's intentional because, our mission is to change the system as a whole and be sustainable. Yeah, be something that really changes life for everyone rather than like having to constantly bring in donations to like, and if we set the precedent that like we're constantly like raising money to give stuff away, that cycle basically never ends.
Yeah. And I saw something recently on the news about Mark Cuban saying that he was going to step back from Shark Tank or something to focus more on things like what you're doing.
Yeah. So speaking to like having to do those 80, 100-hour weeks for, years and years, it's actually gotten a lot easier recently. And it's down to two things. One, we're big enough now. Like I'm used to be very, very micromanagey. And now we've got about 70 employees and it's just impossible. So I've had to like...
You can't micromanage it.
Yeah. And the other part of it is Mark is around. Like he's on as properly like a full-time operator co-founder now.
Wow.
Like I'm sure, like before I was texting with him in the car before we got in here.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of strange to see him like taking like customer service requests and stuff. I feel like if I was a billionaire, I'd be doing other things. But no, I think he's just, a true like manic workaholic and he's good at it.
He's good at it. Yeah.
Yeah. I make a big to-do. I'm good at math, but I never did finance. I don't know what all that stuff like, but he does. He's a like financial wunderkind, obviously, the results speak for themselves. So like having him around to do that stuff and like just take over a lot of the responsibility has been shockingly helpful.
It's really compelling to be kind of getting an assist from a billionaire who actually believes enough in the thing that you're doing to stop what he's doing and do that.
Yeah. And it's definitely surreal. Like I think he was annoyed with me because I didn't believe he wanted to do it for a while. It's like, when you're a kid, you're like, oh, look, I want to be on this TV show and like hang out with like the cartoon. It's like that, but for real. Yeah, I watched Shark Tank for 10 years and now like, the guy is all in.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
I mean, these things, because again, I talk about karmic residue. I mean, causes and conditions of everything come to a head in you and me sitting here having this conversation about all this. It's beautiful, man. Beautiful. So last question. Are you going to be okay? Because you work really, we were talking about that. Like how, you said these things are helping now. Mark's on board. Your health is better controlled. You have the doctor relationship now that with your primary care doctor. But founders and doctors and others who are in these situations, they tend to be, how do I put this? There's a degree of imposter syndrome. There's a degree of there's kind of a shame component. There's all kinds of unworthiness stuff that drives. Then there's all the workaholic that works into that, the micromanaging and all of that. And it can actually kill you. Like,
no joke.
Yeah. Now the energy I get sitting with you is that you're not dying.
I hope.
Yeah.
You're a primary care doctor. You can tell me.
I'm a hospitalist. I'm a fake primary care doctor.
Okay.
Yeah. How do you feel, you said this has kind of evolved for you a little bit, like maybe other people in healthcare who are trying to disrupt or people who are trying to run companies. It's a very lonely and stressful kind of space. And there's not many people to talk to about it that don't have some kind of an agenda or are literally crazy in the sense that, they're just like you, but they're not willing to be vulnerable and open about it, or they're not able to. They're scared, right? So how are you seeing that?
Well, that's a good question. And I know you've had personal experience with it as well. I think it's just something I have to like step back from my natural impulses to like be like, no, if you're dead, like you're not going to help anybody. Like, and it sounds glib, but kind of true.
Yeah.
I think, like my impulse is to just keep working, like to just keep doing what I'm doing. And you have to sort of proactively say like, oh, I need to step back and like spend an hour or two at the gym, including drive time or whatnot. And like, it's like I think any other thing that requires discipline, like, I brush my teeth every night, now I'm going to work out every night, type of thing, and just getting into a rhythm. But, change is hard for everybody,
What about sleep?
Oh, I'm good at sleep.
That's good. That's good.
That is probably why I'm not a surgeon, is I suck at like operating at all without sleep.
That's
that
good.
one I'm okay with.
That's a gift.
But,
yeah.
But and I will say the benefit of like not ripping anybody off is I sleep like a baby. Yeah.
So you mean that purpose thing?
Yeah,
the meaning
helps.
and connection thing.
Yeah, and I think it helps drive the other people who work for Mark Cuban Cost Plus. Look at me here pretending like it was all me. Like, no, like there's a large team of people who are at the top of their field on top of it, working with us. And I think it's all people who are so – because, we're a pseudo-philanthropy. We don't pay top dollar. Like every one of our like senior people and even our junior people could be making more money elsewhere.
Yeah.
But, I think it's people who are – later along in their careers and are like, you know what, I'm sick of it. I want to fix it. And that sense of purpose really helps us get, sort of the top-notch people who really know how to, make an impact. And, we're trying to do so many different things at the same time. People tell me it's a good idea to like, if you're starting a company, do one thing and do it really well. Well, unfortunately, we don't have that luxury.
Don't have the luxury to do that.
Yeah, if we really want to get the price all the way to the patient, we're building a manufacturer, which takes up probably the bulk of my time these days. Like, our bioburden analyzer, which is like a component of our sterile Wi-Fi unit, water for sterile injection loop, like is malfunctioning, and you got to talk to like the like the person from the company that makes it. To all of these little infinitely many tiny details, like, my chief engineer and I, like a few months ago, were like crawling around on the floor together, looking for little defects in the floor because like any imperfection is a place bacteria can hide. So we got to like buff it all out. Like the covings, which is like the little corners. You can't have square corners. You need round corners so that they're easier to clean. And those wouldn't stay up because like there were little flakes in them that we had to remove from it's just a nightmare. But we can't. It's not just a manufacturer. It's the wholesaler. It's the mail order pharmacy. It's the retail network of independent pharmacies, and even this sort of pseudo PBM employee benefit solution that we're building out all at the same time, which leads to a lot of interesting conversations because we've got leaders for each of those verticals, and they're usually never in a room with each other. Like the head engineer never talks to the PBM guy.
Right.
Or like the wholesale guy never talks to the PBM guy or the pharmacy guy. So there's a lot of interesting ideas that come from just getting a bunch of people who are really, really smart.
Yeah.
And from really different, within the pharmaceutical industry.
Right.
By their standards, like from very different walks of life together.
Right.
Just to brainstorm with each other and see what happens.
Man, that's really interesting. Yeah. Really interesting. Well, and one thing you mentioned just in passing that we probably should just quickly double back, and then we should wrap up because I've kept you too long, but or not, or we just keep going, and then you can tell me more about this.
I've got people now.
What was? Yeah, I've got people. I've got people. You want to see my people? This is the people I got. This. This and Risa. Risa is my ops wizard. So you said you're kind of creating a de facto PBM.
Yeah.
So I thought PBMs were bad. Tell me what you're doing with that.
Yeah, I hesitate to use the term.
Yeah.
But people sometimes, another criticism we get is, aren't you just new middlemen? And
right.
Honestly, the answer to that is yes. It's just we're trying to be honest middlemen.
Right. Transparent.
One of Mark's big things, and I'm 100% on board with it, is we don't sell pharmaceuticals. We sell trust. And you can very easily lose trust. So, we're going to do our best. But basically, we're trying to build new infrastructure to do the tasks that need to get done that operates just in a transparent and honest way and doesn't rip you off, which shouldn't be that hard, but somehow is.
But somehow you're down in the so creating a kind of a transaction processor for large health plans, say, that you want to create. You could call it a PBM, but really it's operating on a totally different transparent.
We kind of break it down. Like one of the things we quickly realized was like So a couple of years ago, we announced we're building the Mark Cuban PBM. We're going to do it. And there's this chicken and the egg problem in PBMs where like in order to get the pharma companies to justify the time in like negotiating with you, you need to have a certain number of lives under management is the industry speak.
Right. Covered lives.
Yeah, but like millions of lives. You need to have millions of customers already. But if you don't have any contracts, you can't get any customers.
Seems to be a chicken and the egg. Now that's where the Ukrainian bots come in. I've solved your problem.
Man, why didn't we talk 3 years ago? But yeah, the way we were going to – so there are sort of newer good actor PBMs, much smaller than the big guys. But, the way we figured we'd initially solve the problem is by white labeling their PBM or basically just, putting our name on top of another good actor PBM that, was able to start doing this. And we started having discussions with employers and very quickly they asked, like, how did you set up a PBM? And we were like, oh, well, we white labeled these other guys. And the response was, well, why don't we just go to the other guys? We're like, well, this is an investment in the long-term future. And, it was a bad sales pitch.
Yeah.
So now we're trying to sort of break down individual parts of it that have the most value, like rather than building the like payment processing piece, which plenty of people have already done.
Right.
We're just negotiating the contracts now that we have lots of lives.
Got it. You have covered lives. Yeah.
Covered lives.
Yeah. Lives under management.
Lives under management.
That's right. LUM.
I forget what there's another weird acronym
for it. Yeah.
I'm just a pretty face.
Yeah, at this point. Yeah. This is where the audience is like looking at their watch going,
they're like,
lives under management? Okay. One to beam out.
One of those podcasts.
Get your engineer on the line, Scotty. Dude, I think we did a thing, man.
That was awesome.
You know what to do. Say the name of the website, son.
CostPlusDrugs.com.
The Mark Cuban Cost Plus Drug Companies.
Look for us in your EMR. We're under Mark. If you search Mark Cuban, you'll find us. But Mark Cuban Cost Plus Drug Company.
Don't search, Rubik's Cuban. Don't search any other.
We have nothing to do with the nation of Cuba. We are not under any embargoes. We do get that from like random financial institutions.
Do you really?
Yeah. No. What is one of the companies that registers domains?
Like GoDaddy or something?
Something like that was like, we're not allowed. There's an embargo.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it took us like a month to register.
Oh my gosh, dude. Yeah. I want an embargo against my name. Like no Zubins.
No,
I mean,
No Zubins Club?
The No Zubins Club.
The No Zubins Club.
Yeah. They're also the hair club for men. I'm not just.
Most of my sense of humor is just like Simpsons references from the early 90s.
Yeah.
And I just rely on everybody knowing what those references are.
Many of those, like, release the hounds. And then I get into the South Park references. And then now I'll do an occasional Family Guy reference. That's the most modern I get.
I see them a lot on the TikTok.
On the TikTok,
yes.
Yeah,
because they got the like brief.
The Stewie is very good on the TikTok. Yes. So I will tell my crew until the next time we see each other when you'll be giving me the update again.
Yes.
So since the last time in 2 years, now you've got all these drugs there. Your website is popping. You're growing rapidly. My pitch to you guys is, if you're a doctor, you know how to prescribe this stuff now. It's in your EMR. Just search Cubatronic, I believe is what. Okay, Cuban. If you have insurance, you can check and see what your plan is and whether you would save money with this. I think that people should support this because it will actually be a proof of concept, will grow this thing so that it starts to disrupt these really, listen, I'm just going to say it. This is straight up robbery. And on an unconscious level, at least they know it. On a conscious level, they also probably know it, but that would be implying intent.
I talked to like the lower level staffers at these companies and, I think they are true believers. They're like, if we're not negotiating with the drug companies, you're
going to get ripped off.
You're going to get ripped off. But the people at the top,
they know.
They know what they're doing.
Yeah. Because they're the ones who understand. They're looking at that math going, Yeah. Well, and this is very true. But the thing is, you can self-delude yourself at all levels. It's very easy to do.
True.
Physicians do that. They do a procedure that the studies say doesn't help, but they keep doing it because they're like, no, I know this helps. Anecdotally, this helps. Yeah. And in fact, maybe even causing harm. So we have to undelude ourselves. And so costplusdrugs.com.
Costplusdrugs.com.
zdogmd.com/supporters to support our show, since Mark Cuban isn't. Okay.
Nice. Subtle.
And If you're listening on the podcast, hit subscribe, leave a review. It helps us a lot on iTunes or whatever platform you're on. And if you're on YouTube, subscribe and hit that little bell. You know what that bell does?
Does it alert you to new?
It notifies you. So it's one thing to subscribe but never get notified. It's almost like, I don't know, not being subscribed.
Should they post a comment in the...
You know what? This is where your marketing genius just helped me. I never ask for that, but it's very helpful. Leave a comment, smash that like button. And the reason that helps is that YouTube's algorithm actually responds to that kind of engagement by thinking the video is very cool and then sends it to people. And this video is really cool, not because of me, but because of you and everything that you and your team are doing. I like your Dr. Evil. That's good.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't spend 8 years in
evil medical school to be called doctor. That's right. And also, I see you're trying to disrupt the PBM.
I'm very happy. Did not commit suicide.
Don't get yourself killed, or you know what I mean? Don't let them kill you, or worse. There's all kinds of things it can be done. I remember when I was talking to Marty McCary, and he wrote the book, The Price We Pay.
What did they do to him?
Well, he's still roughly my height. He didn't get taller, and I think they prevented him from getting taller.
Those assholes.
You know what? They have a laser that. All right, now it's just getting crazy. I love you guys. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Real pleasure.
Thank you.
And we are out. Peace.